I retract a bit of what I said in my last video. I'll get to what I retract in a moment. I didn't really expect anyone to ever watch my video on Yandere Dev. It was brief and sloppy, and this one will probably be just as sloppy, but I also never really envisioned getting into commentary. Sometimes I just have a lot to say and I need an outlet. Sometimes I just want to say things and wonder if someone will listen. Everyone needs some kind of validation, I guess. Should I continue with commentary? I promise I won't be so lazy about editing. I honestly listen to more commentary videos than watch them. I personally don't want someone to be forced to stare at a black screen, though, if they're giving me 100% of their attention. So as before, you'll see screenshots and things pop up here and there, probably more here than in my previous video. I also want to say that I appreciate that a lot of you like the sound of my voice. It's not a new compliment to me, but it is one that I greatly appreciate, and I'm very humbled by it. Before I get started with this, I want to highlight a comment that was copied and pasted in my last video, and you should see it up on your screen right now. It says, "Notice, this message has been written by me and pasted to other YouTube videos. No one in the whole fandom doesn't donate. No one in the whole fandom who doesn't donate I'm going to read this verbatim, okay? Just bear with me. No one in the whole fandom who doesn't donate doesn't have the right to be entitled to complain about when or how the game is finished. You're getting it for free and surprisingly at its current state. People make mistakes in their past and move on, and that doesn't suddenly make an exception for high-end people like Yandere Dev, so no hate should be shown. If you keep complaining that Yandere Dev won't finish the game or keeps delaying it, simply stop following the development. No one is asking you to follow. If you chose to do so, you need to learn the consequences about being in a fandom. People are also just saying that he's delaying the game over petty stuff. When thousands of people are sending hate to you, depression is the result, and not a lot of people who follow Yandere Simulator understand mental health properly." I'll get to why that's very problematic in just a moment. "If you think his coding is bad or his game is bad, go try and make a game yourself, then notice how hard it is. If you're a fan of the game, it means you're interested in it, and it doesn't matter what the developer has been through or has done as long as you like the game, and it's interesting to keep to that." I responded, "The idea that people who don't donate don't have a right to critique Yandev is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard, and it's also extremely obvious that you didn't bother to listen to a word I said in my video. So I assume you're just going around and copying and pasting this to all anti-Yandev videos. Grow up. This is why no one takes his fanbase seriously. You're actually proving a point that I make. His fanbase just regurgitates the stuff he says." Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm not toxic, because I certainly exhibit my own share of toxicity sometimes. That tends to happen more when I'm gaming, but I also hope that I don't have to sit here and explain to you why saying something like "not a lot of people who follow Yandere Simulator understand mental health properly" is just incredibly problematic and very untrue. I don't want to have to go through a laundry list of citing all of the mental health issues that I have, but I will say at least one thing that I have is obsessive compulsive disorder. I was diagnosed with it when I was 6 years old. I don't think that increases or decreases my qualifications on giving Yandere Dev criticism. But the reason I'm featuring this right at the start of this video is to highlight something that is going to be my main point of making this video. It's not just that Yandere Dev's fans take the things he says and repeats them. The point that I want to make here is that his fans are also a part of the problem. Not all of them, of course. I think it only reasonable to stress that, given me sliding my 2 cents onto the table, is to show that there are critics of Yandere Dev who are reasonable people and can make a video without memes or name-calling. I kind of made the mistake of generalizing all of his fans as naive and youthful, however, and I really think it's fair to say that a lot of them are, but, and I absolutely should have touched on this more, that does not make them infallible. They're not incapable of contributing to toxicity and fueling the fire that is the Yandere Dev drama, so to speak. Now, this person very clearly didn't bother listening to anything that I had to say and just copied and pasted a comment that they're leaving on anything they deem as Yandere Dev hate. I'd argue that my video is extremely tame compared to a lot of the Yandere Dev commentary out there, and I went as far as saying I do pity the guy, even if it's not in the way people want him to pity him or for whatever people want to pity him for. This rhetoric that someone can't have an opinion about something unless they have a financial investment in it is just ludicrous. But this is also a youthful logic. By that logic, a lot of video game reviewers and commentators can't have an opinion on the video games they critique because, believe it or not, a lot of these people receive copies of the games they review for free in exchange for publicity their review brings. Just a thought. I really don't think I need to go into more detail as to why this is such a poorly fabricated point. Also, I want to clarify because this person doesn't seem to understand. Again, I would maybe get why they don't understand it because they obviously didn't listen to my video, but I'm not in the Yandere simulator fandom. I actually never considered myself part of the fandom. Fandoms have such a bad rap, and the toxicity of them around, some of my most favorite things is why I tend to stay out of fandoms. I realize that being in a fandom means something different to everyone. I don't really contribute to the fandom of really anything outside of just enjoying video games or consuming first-party content while occasionally looking at maybe cosplays or fan art. I say that doesn't qualify me as part of a fandom when comparing myself to others. I'm not really sure how else to designate that, but I hope you get what I mean. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm obviously by no means a fan of Yandere Dev. I'm by no means a fan of his game either. I've been debating on playing it for a video or two to offer some kind of commentary, but I think that anything I have to offer there wouldn't be so different compared to what someone else has already done. And I'm not looking at bringing anything new to the table here beyond offering what I feel is a calmer and more collected and less memeful dialogue about why so many people have such a problem with Yandere Dev. But I also want to correct misinformation. For example, it seems that the bulk of Reddit thinks Null is responsible for the hack on Yandere Dev's Reddit, when that doesn't seem to be the case at all when you actually go to fact check it. In my previous video, I gave a brief timeline explaining how the hack went down, and some wouldn't even really call it a hack. The individual actually just changed Yandere Dev's passwords, at least according to them. And that's how they were able to get access to his email and his Reddit. If you're not familiar with who Null is, he's the owner of KiwiFarms.net, a controversial discussion forum that was launched in 2013. It was originally dedicated to the infamous Sonichu. Now the website features boards and threads for various lolcows as well as some generic topics. I said this before, but I do have many criticisms about Kiwi Farms. However, one thing I feel very defensive about is when big-name YouTube commentators use the content from Kiwi Farms without giving proper credit. I think it's a fine source, and I don't know if people don't give it credit because they're afraid of setting themselves up as some sort of target or afraid of having their name linked to Kiwi Farms. I'm not altogether sure. I'm not claiming to be in the know here. I'm just saying that the source is open to the public and it's easy to check and say where you got your information from. While I personally prefer primary sources, saying something like, I heard about the hack on Reddit, just go look at it, isn't going to the actual source. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. When the subreddit changed over on July 3rd, Not Based or Red Pilled, who I'm going to be calling NBOR from here on out if that's okay with you, name dropped Null in the description and changed the subreddit's icon to Null's avatar in Kiwi Farms. Null seemed to find this entertaining based on his responses in the thread, and Kiwi Farms users encouraged NBOR to wipe the ban list, ban Yondev and his previous mods, and change over ownership to the subreddit. A lot of Yandere Dev's critics found this particularly entertaining, considering Yondev has had quite the history with this subreddit, and it eventually led him to purchase it for $3,000 so he could gain full control of it. NBOR also leaked an NDA between TinyBuild and Yandere Dev that I, for legal reasons, really don't feel completely comfortable showing here, and if you're curious about it, you can very easily see it on Kiwi Farms. I read it thoroughly, and a lot of the discussion there echoes how I feel. The NDA is dated March 2019, and by reading it, it would seem Yondev did owe them $31,000 at some point, but that's no longer the case. I originally wanted to go into copyright and First Amendment law, and reading the document was actually very interesting to me, and in ways it kind of solidified my opinion of TinyBuild as a company. I own and play a lot of their games and have always held the company in kind of a high regard. I don't want to talk about something to this degree that I don't have first-hand knowledge of. I wasn't a fly on the wall and I wasn't involved in the business dealings, but I do want to say just that in general I have a lot of respect for TinyBuild and their advocacy of small game developers. NBOR's actions received a mixture of praise and criticism, a big one being that Kiwi Farms has a no poop touching rule, which is a phrase designated to commentary forums where specific people or groups of people are discussed but not messed with. Basically, it means you can say what you want about this person, but don't go and engage them or their fan base. This leads me to Yandere Dev's fan base. I know a lot of people are concerned about Yandev's Patreon and how it's increasing in earnings, but if you look at the statistics, like in April, he had 691 patrons and he was making over $2,000 a month, whereas now his patron count hasn't spiked, but it still seems to be on a steady downward slope. The increase in amount could truly mean anything, and I think it's safe to say that those devoted to Yandere Dev are just contributing more to him given the recent events. And I'm only saying this because I want to stress just how important it is to look at the big picture before reacting. In my previous video, I mentioned how I follow the Game Sleuth. I really like the guy a lot. He seems reasonable, he seems kind. I shamelessly appreciate his memes as much as I appreciate him trying to also pump out some non-Yandere Dev related content. I'm enjoying his thrift store find videos, and if you follow him as well, you'll know that he live streamed on July 17th, showing off a Wii he snagged at a thrift shop. It was very enjoyable, and he seemed genuinely thrilled, and it was honestly a little wholesome. The narrative going around is that Yandere Dev crashed the stream with these comments. Yeah, Sleuth, downloading all those games you just mentioned on a Wii. What does that say about you, Four Eyes? Your glasses aren't a good game, Four Eyes. The people in this live comment section should donate money to you for contact lenses, buddy. On July 14th, Some Weird Pace Gaming was live streaming and it appeared as though the same thing happened. Yandere Dev crashed his stream with these comments. This is why I disabled people from replying to my comment on Discord. And I thought I sucked at covering songs. Now, when I first saw these, I thought the same thing too. I was honestly thinking, why on earth is he engaging with two of his constant critics? But then, as I thought about it some more, I noticed that there was no verified checkmark next to Yandere Dev's name. Now, someone beat me to this earlier today, and they made a throwaway account on Kiwi Farms, and I want to give them full credit for checking this out, even though it's just a throwaway account. I went back and I checked this myself in the live stream chats, which you can do on their respective channels. He says, honestly, I'm on the fence about whether that's Alex too, but I'm on mobile, and at least for me, verified ticks don't show up on any channel in comparison to desktop, where they do. Game Sleuth was streaming with his phone, while Some Weird Pace Gaming was on his computer, I believe. And he does have the chat replay on his most recent stream, so I'm going to go check. Now, as this person went to go check, they noticed that no, there was no check mark next to any of these comments. Therefore, they were not made from the official Yandere Dev YouTube. He actually looked, and you can check for yourself that there are a lot of imitation Yandere Dev YouTube accounts. Not certain why, I mean, even to the point of uploading his videos, but they've been inactive for months or either years. In addition to all of this, Yandere Dev was streaming at the time, so I mean, I guess that could count as an alibi. Other members of Kiwi Farms corroborated this, looking into how the checkmarks appear during live streams. Now, could this be Yandere Dev under another account? Absolutely. Of course it could. Do I personally think it is? No. I really think it's a fan of his messing with some of his more active critics. Hey, this is post-editing me, and I just had a thought. It's not fair for me to just assume it was a fan of Yandere Dev, because it just as equally could have been someone who doesn't like him out to spread more drama. I would have edited out me saying that it was a fan of Yandere Dev, but I've opted to leave it in to kind of own my assumption and hold myself accountable. I really value fact-checking, and the only way I'll get better at it is if I'm transparent and acknowledge mistakes or generalizations. I'm almost 6 hours into prepping this video now, but I just saw around 4 hours ago that someone posted this in the Yandere Simulator subreddit, so I wanted to insert it. Now people are assuming the Game Sleuth is responsible for it, and I don't want to say that he is or isn't. My gut tells me that he isn't, and this is just someone messing around. The subreddit seems to be pretty critical of the Game Sleuth, and I don't see anyone as immune to criticism, but it's not fair for me to say that this person is responsible or that person is responsible without actually knowing. I mean, the subreddit still thinks Null is the one who hacked them, so I'm not considering them a reliable source of fact-checked information right now. And that's my overarching theme here, though, as I dive more into this. There's so much misinformation on both sides and very little rational discussion, which is a shame because it only gives Yandere Dev and his fans more fuel. But just as quickly as they all jumped on Yandere Dev, now they're all pouncing on the Game Sleuth, and I'm just amazed at how fast they move from one narrative to the next. Even the title of this Reddit post is a problem. The Game Sleuth screenshots are fake, because the screenshots aren't fake. You can go into both the Game Sleuths and Some Weird Pace Gaming's live streams and see the comments yourself. What's fake is the account that made the comments. Just some food for thought, given that this person is saying they want to clear up misinformation. if you want to correct misinformation, you have to be very careful with your wording, especially if you're going to throw someone under the bus like that. Which, in my opinion, only adds more complexity to this problem. In my previous video, I painted a picture of Yandere Dev's fan base of being innocent, young, impressionable, and generally naive. I still think that. However, I've made the mistake of dismissing them as not a huge part of the problem, when they most certainly are part of the problem. Being young and ill-informed doesn't make you immune to making mistakes and or making stupid choices. While what's triggered this is the comment left on my video and the comments left on the Game Sleuths and some Weird Pace Gaming's live streams, it's gotten me to take a more critical look at information in front of me. I'm not objective. Quite the contrary, I have many criticisms about Yandere Dev and Yandere Simulator. I think he's made and continues to make a lot of poor choices and that he inevitably needs to take a break. I know a lot of people would disagree with me, but I don't think that at his core that he is a bad person. And when I said before that I pity him, it's not what he wants pity for or in the way that he wants pity. And I want to end with this. It's a comment someone left on my previous video because there were two things that this person said that really hit me personally. You can see that I underlined both of them, but his game is a classic case of a beginner indie dev creating a project that was too large for him, and I hate how we always mix criticism into hate. When I was 17, I discovered how much I loved photography, and little did I know that that would be my ultimate downfall for a rather embarrassing amount of time. But I loved it. I wanted to make a career out of it. But I was also a beginner and had a lot of growing to do. The unfortunate thing is that I immediately saw myself as a professional in the craft, and I felt inferior if anyone had any sort of suggestions or criticisms of my work or method. I carried that for almost 4 years before dumping photography altogether. While some criticism that came my way was absolutely harsh, I regret not taking it because I feel as though to this day I would have learned so much more. I felt like this is my art, so I do it my way. You can't critique someone's art. You can't teach me how to do something better. My career since then went all over the place, from photography to photojournalism to journalism to technical writing, professional writing to journalism. Then I took the LSATs. I was going to go to law school. I wanted to be a First Amendment lawyer, then family court, and copyright, then children's media, then a children's author, and now I'm a teacher. But I still have my cameras, and there's so much that keeps me from touching them, and honestly, a lot of it is shame. When I try to get back into photography, I wasn't really fully recovered from the damage, and it was damage that I did to myself. I turned any criticism into hate, and I took on something that was much larger than me, inevitably costing me something that I was quite passionate about and absolutely could have gotten better at, and could have turned into a career had I not been so self-centered. I reveled in people praising my work and shunned people who even blinked in my direction. So maybe that's why I pity Yandere Dev, because in a way I know at least some of what he's going through. From 2013 to 2016, I helped run a huge Markiplier fan group on Facebook called Markiplier's Heroes. At our peak, we had 19,000 members. We were very active and involved in the community, and if you're familiar with things like Dream.exe, that fan game came from a member of ours and 2 friends of mine. I'm actually in that fan game as well because I was a beta tester. That group was my life force. Everything I did involved that group, and I loved being a leader there. I loved having people look up to me and come to me for help. I loved feeling needed and relied on and meeting people's expectations. There were so many times where I thought, if something happened to this group, that would be it. I don't know how I would recover. Well, something did happen. It's a very long story and not one for this video, but while the loss of the group was devastating for me, today I feel like a better person for it. I don't have the stress of constantly having to attend to such a huge public responsibility, and I learned I was only, in the end, clinging to it because I really liked being in a leadership role and having people look up to me and respect me. Now, I had a lot of people who hated me too because we ran a very tight ship there and had some strict rules. I have regrets about how I handled some things, friends that I lost, and when Yandere Dev expresses why he just can't let go and call Yandere Simulator's development a hobby, it's really hard for me to chastise him for that because I get it. When you do have fans or people who support you, it's really hard to let that go because it becomes such a huge part of your life and you can't imagine your life without it. But, it isn't until you release yourself from that responsibility that you realize how much you miss your freedom and how trapped you really were. If you made it this far, I thank you. I'm kind of flattered that people seem interested in what I have to say, and I may continue releasing commentary videos right now. They're most likely to just be on Yandere Dev for now because I do have a lot to say, but I don't like pumping things out that other people say because I feel like it's redundant. I'll put more efforts into editing things too, but I'd ultimately like to find some more things to talk about in the future. This is mostly an experiment, but after the feedback I received from my last video, which just, the view count honestly stunned me. I learned that this is something I kind of want to pursue. It's a good outlet for me, and I just really need something like that right now. So, for now, thanks for listening. Take care.